We've got a lot to cover in this video because this is the full breakdown of the 5-step process we followed to generate $19,500 in revenue from one webinar. Now, for some context, this was a webinar for Adam Parker, an established online coach in the holistic health space. And he had tried to run a webinar on his own 4 times before this one, but it didn't result in a single high-ticket sale off the back of it. But then, when we implemented the 5-step process that I'll break down for you in this video in heavy detail, we generated over $19,000 in revenue from one webinar. And this just goes to show that webinars work if they're done correctly, and that's what I'll show you in this video. But before I show you exactly how we did this, I want to show you why it made sense to run a webinar in the first place. First of all, it gives you leverage. With a webinar, you can nurture and convert your audience at scale because you're delivering a sales presentation one-to-many instead of doing it over DMs or on a one-to-one sales call. It does allow the heavy lifting for you in a one-to-many setting. Number 2, you're also able to build more trust and stand out in the market because you're literally on a live call with your audience for 90 minutes. So even if they don't buy off the back of the webinar, they're still way more sold on your method and working with you as a person. So for example, they maybe buy on a second webinar down the line, or maybe with your other funnel at the side of the webinar, for example, through the DMs or watching your VSL. They're still way more sold on you, and that's always a positive effect. Then number 3, we also saw an increase in people paying in full after this webinar than people just coming through the DMs because the calls are pre-sold. We handled objections, shifted beliefs, and sold them on Adam's unique method and more for 90 minutes straight before they even hopped on a sales call. So a lot of the things that you usually need to do on a sales call, the webinar had already done for you. So with that being said, let's dive into the first step of the 5-step process, which is market understanding. In my opinion, this is the most important step because it decides how successful the rest of the campaign will actually be for you. The goal is to get a proper market understanding and then give this understanding to AI so that's the context to actually help us throughout the campaign, because AI is powerful, but only if it has information and context, otherwise it's literally blind. So step 1 is gathering this information about the ICP, the offer, the brand voice, Adam's story, testimonials, literally everything about the business. And even more information such as sales call transcripts, student interviews, and long-form content, things that aren't really documented in structured documents, but raw information we can give to AI because all the context it can use to get a bigger picture of the business as a whole. Then step 2 was using this information, and number 1, we filled out a full market research document which ended up being 16 pages. Then what we did is giving this information to AI in a structured way, which is using JSON profiles. So we had a JSON profile on the offer, the brand voice, the story, and the ICP. And with this, we can use this to give AI context in every single conversation without having to write a mega prompt for every single new conversation we have. And with this, we can use AI to get a lot of things done faster. So for example, if I start with a big idea of what I want an email to, the announcement email for the webinar campaign to be about, and then AI can give me a couple of first drafts, I can compare these drafts, then I can tell it what I want to improve, and then it can give me an improved version, then I can refine this and then I can launch it. I am always in control. I give the vision and I launch it, but with enough context, AI can really help me do a lot of output fast so we can get more things to compare and more ideas out there, which is really, really powerful. Step 3 was getting clarity on the marketing message for the campaign and also the offer we're going to sell at the end. Knowing what awareness level you're actually marketing to with this campaign. We were marketing to a solution-aware audience. And when we do that, the goal is to differentiate the offer owner, in this case Adam, and the method from everything else out there in the market. Because they know, right, what they need to do, but they need to be sure that they want to do it with you and using your method. And that's why we focus a lot of things on differentiating Adam's method and Adam as a person. That means his credibility, his story, and also why his method works over everything else I've tried in the past. Then for the offer positioning and how we're going to sell the offer at the end, we had a high ticket offer, and therefore we made a decision to not sell the offer on the webinar, but on the webinar sell a call and then sell the webinar on that call, still one-to-one sales, but let the webinar do a lot of the heavy lifting so that one-to-one sales call becomes way easier. And once we had clarity on all these things, it's time for the sign-up system, which is step 2 of the 5-step process. The goal of step 2 is getting sign-ups, and that sounds obvious, but I see way too many people that try to sell them on showing up for the webinar or sell them on the offer when they haven't even registered yet. So focus on that first action first, and then take the rest after that. So the mindset behind every single marketing asset is making people feel like this is a live event they can genuinely not miss. So they get that feeling of FOMO. Now, we used 2 methods. First one, it was paid ads, but only an ad spend of $346. And then organic, which I will focus on in this video, which was emails and Instagram. So the strategy for the organic promotion for the Instagram Reels was taking winning past ideas and then stitching a webinar CTA onto them. And then also taking these ideas and doing stories out of them. And then for the emails, it was writing value-dense emails that didn't really feel salesy, but that made people feel like the only way to actually get what they needed was to show up live. So we sold them on the importance of the topic we're going to teach on the webinar and what we're going to teach, but not actually how to implement it or more in depth about it, because they have to actually sign up to get that information. And that's how we made signing up feel like the logical next step. As I said, FOMO throughout all of this to make sure that they feel like they can't miss out. It's literally click the button to register or miss out, because this is happening once. It's a live event, and therefore we have a natural urgency and scarcity baked into it, because it's literally sign up or miss out, and a CTA. And then we send all this traffic to a landing page with one goal, as I talked about earlier, getting them to actually sign up. Click the button and register now. So here is what the landing page looked like, with a banner at the top making it clear that this is a live event, when it is, where it is, and that's it. Then we send all the traffic to one landing page with one goal, click the button and register now. As I talked about earlier, we're not selling them on the offer or on showing up right now, it's only actually signing up. So we had a banner at the top that just made it very clear that this is a live event, then a headline on why they should care about this, then a mini VSL about 3 to 4 minutes, then a CTA, and then a timer with some urgency. And this here above the fold is everything they actually need to know to actually sign up. So then we can really get all the people with high intent to just sign up right off the bat. And then below this is just more context. So what you're going to learn, CTA, who is this for and who is this not for. And people that need some more context will scroll down and then take action right around here. And then below that, we just keep on handling the fear. So some credibility, some proof, some results. And we do this because we can naturally get people that already want to sign up above here, and they won't need to actually scroll down. And by people that want more context or more proof, they will naturally scroll down more and then take action when they're ready. And once we had them to actually take action and click the button and they're registered, it's time for step 3, which is nurture and remind. You see, getting registrants is one thing, but getting them to actually show up is another. And this is where most webinar campaigns actually fall apart, because they think that now that they've actually registered, we're good to go, but this is far from the truth. So once they've signed up, they get redirected to a confirmation page looking something like this. We had confirming their registration and when it is and where it is, then a headline of what they need to do on this page, then a confirmation video also talking about the importance of the steps in the pre-workshop checklist, and then you want the pre-webinar checklist or the to-do before they leave this page. And you should have these 3 on this checklist at all times. The most important thing is the WhatsApp broadcast group. So to make sure that actually joined it, we gave everyone who joined the WhatsApp group a lead magnet. So as a thank you for joining. And this needs to be something desirable enough that they want it on its own, but also designed to nurture them and make the webinar feel like the natural next step. So once they've learned this thing, they also need to learn this thing, and you'll teach the next thing on the webinar. Also, WhatsApp is great because it's an app that most people use. They get notifications on their phone for literally free. It costs nothing like SMS reminders would do. It's also great because when you get this high open rate on these messages, then you really know that people will get the resources you send them, and it's way more back and forth. They can engage with you on a different level than they would do on SMS or on emails. So it's great for community, for high open rates, and therefore high show rates on the webinar. The second thing on the checklist is getting to add the event or the webinar to their calendar with a simple button looking something like this. This is so they don't forget about it, and also they make a micro commitment to showing up because they added it to their calendar, and this commitment really increases show rate as well. And then the last thing you need to have on the checklist is to make sure that they check the confirmation email you've sent them. So in this email, we just want to make sure that they've confirmed that they made a good decision to actually sign up to the webinar, and then also push again for them to actually join the WhatsApp group and the calendar. So you have these links again and tell them the importance of actually doing these 2 steps in the email. And then we actually had 2 things as reminders and nurturing before the webinar. The first thing is the WhatsApp broadcast group. And here we sent valuable resources like the YouTube videos or the lead magnets, which means that we kept them engaged, and we made them taking actions like watching YouTube videos, for example. And then we also had reminders about the webinar and the link to join on the day of the live. Then for the emails, we didn't teach the how, we sold them on the what and on the why. So what I mean by that is we didn't teach them how to do the things we're going to teach them in the webinar. We only said, here's what we're going to teach you, and here's why it is so important. And then they need to actually show up to the webinar to get that information. This increases show up rate because they get that feeling of FOMO, that fear of missing out. Also, of course, we had reminders. For example, the webinar is in 2 days, make sure you're there, literally. But we had this disguised also as value dense emails, so we're not just spamming them. Then the last important thing on the nurture and reminding section is you need to give them reasons to actually show up live instead of just waiting to get the replay. Because if you don't do that, then you'll see a higher increase in people just waiting for the replay, and people are less likely to take action on the replay because they're less likely to sit through the entire thing because it's not live and they don't really have to do it. So in our case, we had a 30-minute open Q&A at the end of the webinar, and we made sure that people knew that we're going to have this, and if they want to ask their questions and get the value, they needed to show up live. And the second thing was that everyone who showed up live was entered into a giveaway. And if you wait for the replay, you don't get these things. And once we had all of these things in place, it was time for the live webinar. Now, there's a few mistakes I see people making when they run webinars, and the first one is treating it like a lecture. They usually introduce themselves for maybe 5 minutes, then they go into teaching for maybe 45 minutes, and then they jump straight into the pitch and just hope people will buy. But this is wrong, because the webinar is a 90-minute sales presentation, not a lecture, and every single word needs to be intentional. So what we did is that before we even touched the slides or the presentation, we scripted out the entire webinar word for word in a Google Doc that ended up being 20 pages long. And for the webinar script, we used this framework. First is the hook. We open with a hook that is designed to keep them watching for the full 90 minutes because you're competing with so many different sources of fast dopamine, like their phone that is most likely next to them while you're presenting your webinar. And if you don't give them a reason to stay early on, then they'll go scrolling or do something else mid-presentation, or just leave because they get bored or they don't feel like they have a reason to stay. And once you've done that, it's the intro. So instead of jumping straight into the teaching or value section of the webinar, we went into quite a long introduction. We talked about their pain points, their desired outcome, and limiting beliefs. And this way, we can really excite them about what's to come, really hook them in, because they see that we understand their situation and they feel seen and heard. Most people skip this and go straight into the content section, but that's a big mistake. If they don't care about what we're going to teach them, then the teaching doesn't land and the pitch definitely won't. So then, we also spent significant time on Adam's story because throughout the webinar, we're selling them on 3 levels. And that is actually the second mistake I wanted to mention, which is missing one of the 3 levels that you need to sell them on in a webinar, which is trust in the offer owner, in you, in this case, trust in Adam, trust in themselves, and trust in their vehicle. For trust in Adam, we used his story and credibility. For trust in themselves, we showed results from previous clients who had been through the process that we're going to teach them and who had been where they are right now and made it out the other end and achieved the people's watching desired outcome. And then when it came to trusting the vehicle, we built that in the training section of the webinar, which comes after the introduction. So in the training section, we taught them the what and the why, again as in the emails, but now the how was a bit more elaborate, but we still didn't give them the full picture of the how to actually achieve things. Because if you teach the how in full, they just go and do it themselves. Because why would they want to pay you to do it if they know exactly how to do it themselves? But when they understand what they need to do and why it is important, buying your solution becomes the natural next step because they need implementation. So if you haven't taught them the how, but focused on the what and the why, then buying your solution becomes the natural next step. And after that, when the natural next step is buying or taking action, we just go into the pitch. And on this webinar, we pitched them a call, as talked about earlier, because we sold a high ticket offer and it made more sense. But if you pitch a call, you'll naturally get more volume of calls because, it's free, most likely. But you don't want to get junk volume of calls. You want to have qualified calls. And therefore, we had a form able to book the call. And this way, we could see who was qualified based on their answers in this form. And this combination got roughly 30% of the people on the live to book a call. And not everyone, of course, but most of them were actually qualified calls. Because a webinar naturally filters for qualified people who have the intention to actually learn, to actually stay throughout a full webinar. And those are usually people that are serious about taking action as well. Then after we had the script nailed in the Google Doc, we made the presentation, the slides for the webinar, and we made a presentation that ended up being 488 slides long. And this is because switching slides frequently keeps people visually engaged and it's easier to consume than big walls of tiny text, which increases retention throughout a 90-minute call, which is quite long. Nowadays, people have very short attention spans, which means you need to make it engaging and not just have like a big wall of tiny text, essentially. And once we had the presentation nailed and we actually ran the webinar, we had the fifth and final step, which was maximizing calls booked. The webinar campaign does not end when the webinar live does, because there will always be people that just can't make it to the webinar, but they registered for the webinar. And these people are good leads because they've shown intent by registering. They're interested in what you do, but they were just busy or couldn't make it to the live call. So we need to make sure that we can get the most out of these leads as well. And to do that, we had 3 things in place. The first was the replay page. We sold them on watching the replay the same way we sold them on watching the live webinar, because we made it very clear what it was, what mattered, and what they would get by watching the replay. And then we had the same CTA as on the live webinar. But here's the thing that made it actually convert the way it did. We had a clear countdown timer to when the replay would get taken down, and that was 4 days after the webinar. And then we just kept our word to that and took it down. But we didn't just take down the page. We replaced the video of the replay with an image saying replay expired, so people could feel that the urgency was actually real, because it was. The second was email sequences, and we segmented the emails based on behavior. So people who attended the live got different emails from people who didn't. We weren't sending the same message to everyone. We were selling to each group on the specific next action that made sense for where they were. So for example, the people that were there live but didn't book a call, we wanted them to actually book in the call. But people that didn't attend a webinar, we sold them on actually watching the replay before booking in a call. And then third, for the WhatsApp group, we use that for frequent reminders about the urgency when things get taken down, and to redirect people for, if you've watched the webinar, then here's the next step. If you haven't watched it, then go here to watch the replay, etc. Between the live and the follow-up system, we ended up with 25 calls that resulted in over $19,000 in revenue from one webinar. If you have any questions whatsoever on this process, feel free to DM me on Instagram. My handle is @JoelGonfeldt, or comment down below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And if you're a coach that wants this entire system implemented by us, then DM me on Instagram or click the first link in the description down below for a free strategy call on how you can implement this 5-step process for your specific coaching or info product business. Now, with that being said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.